Victoria Sterling had been living a double life. By day, she was the hidden daughter of America's richest family. By night, she ran a small diner in downtown Chicago, far away from the luxury she was born into. She had always dreamed of a normal life, one where people loved her for who she was, not her bank account. When she met Marcus Vail, a broke businessman barely keeping his company alive, she thought she'd found real love. He fell head over heels for the simple diner owner, never suspecting that the woman serving him coffee could buy out every business on Wall Street. Victoria secretly pulled strings behind the scenes, making sure Marcus got the contracts he needed. She slipped him opportunities like a guardian angel he never knew existed. For 3 long years, she kept her secret. But tonight, their wedding anniversary, she was finally ready to tell him everything. Victoria chose her most beautiful dress and headed to the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, the same place where they'd shared their first kiss. Her heart raced with excitement. This would be the night that changed everything. But when she walked into the restaurant, her world came crashing down. There was Marcus, sitting across from another woman. Scarlett Knox, a famous socialite known for her connections to powerful men in New York's elite circles. Victoria's hands shook as she walked toward their table. Marcus looked up, his face twisting with annoyance instead of love. "What are you doing here?" he snapped coldly. Victoria's voice trembled. "Marcus, it's our anniversary. We planned to meet here tonight." Scarlett let out a cruel laugh. "Oh, so you're the little waitress he married." She turned to Marcus with a smirk. "You never told me she was so ordinary." Victoria's world was spinning, but she fought to stay strong. "Marcus, what's happening here?" Marcus sighed like she was bothering him. "Victoria, I think it's time we stopped playing pretend. I found someone who can actually help me succeed in life." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. "So you're leaving me, for business deals?" Scarlett pulled out a check and waved it in Victoria's face. "Here, sweetie. Take this as payment for babysitting my boyfriend. Now go find another little diner to play house in." Victoria's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. Without a word, she grabbed the divorce papers Marcus slid across the table and signed her name. "Keep your money," she said firmly. "You'll understand soon enough what you just lost." She turned and walked away, leaving them laughing like hyenas behind her. But their laughter would soon turn to silence. Feeling lost and broken, Victoria wandered the streets of Manhattan until she found herself at a quiet little coffee shop in Soho. She sat alone in the corner, staring at her untouched latte. The pain from tonight still burned in her chest, but she refused to shed a single tear. 3 years of her life wasted on a man who saw her as nothing more than a ladder to climb. But she wouldn't let this destroy her. As she rubbed her aching head, a smooth voice broke through her thoughts. "Mind if I sit here?" Victoria looked up to see a tall, handsome man in an expensive suit. Everything about him screamed power and confidence. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Go ahead." He sat down, setting his coffee cup on the small table. "You look like someone who's had the worst night of their life." Victoria gave him a bitter smile. "Is it that obvious?" He chuckled softly. "I won't ask for details, but whoever caused that look doesn't deserve you." She raised an eyebrow. "You don't even know me." The stranger extended his hand with a confident smile. "Alexander Cross." Victoria's eyes went wide. The Cross family was the second most powerful dynasty in America, right behind her own family's empire. What was he doing in a random coffee shop, talking to her? She shook his hand carefully. "Victoria. Just Victoria." "No last name," he teased with a grin. "Just Victoria," she repeated, studying his face. Alexander leaned back in his chair, looking relaxed. "Well, just Victoria. I came here tonight running from my own problems. My family wants to force me into an arranged marriage, but that's not the life I want." Victoria tilted her head, intrigued. "So you're hiding out too?" "Something like that," he admitted. "I believe in making my own choices." "Sounds like you do too." His words hit her deeper than expected. He didn't know her story, but somehow he understood her pain. Feeling strangely comfortable, she opened up. "I was supposed to be celebrating my wedding anniversary tonight. Instead, I caught my husband with another woman." Alexander's jaw clenched with anger. Then he's the biggest fool in New York. Victoria laughed for the first time all night. That's one way to put it. They sat in peaceful silence, sipping their coffee. Then Alexander said something that would stick with her forever. Life has a strange way of working out. Sometimes our worst moments lead us straight to our best ones. Looking into his kind eyes, Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. They exchanged phone numbers before leaving, both having no idea that this chance meeting would change their lives forever. Over the next few days, Victoria and Alexander texted and called constantly. They talked about business, life, dreams, and fears. For the first time since her divorce, Victoria felt like she could breathe again. She had lost a husband, but maybe she had found something much better: a fresh start. The day everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. The biggest business deal of the year was being decided at the Trump Tower in Manhattan. The conference room was packed with New York's most powerful businessmen, all fighting for the same million-dollar contract. Marcus stood in the crowd, feeling like he was on top of the world. With Scarlett's connections, this deal was as good as his. He straightened his tie as she whispered in his ear. "Relax, baby. After today, you'll be running with the big boys," Scarlett purred, gripping his arm tightly. Just as they were about to enter the building, they saw her. Victoria stood near the entrance, looking like she belonged in a magazine. She was calm, collected, and absolutely stunning. Scarlett scoffed and marched over with a nasty smirk. "Well, well, well. Look what the cat dragged in. Are you here to beg for that money we offered you? I knew you'd come crawling back." Marcus shook his head and laughed cruelly. "Victoria, you really have no shame, do you?" Victoria looked at both of them without flinching. Her voice was ice cold. "I'm not here for your money. You'll understand soon enough." Scarlett rolled her eyes. "Whatever game you're playing, you need to leave before you embarrass yourself." But as they approached the entrance, Janet Mills, the secretary at the front desk, looked at her clipboard and frowned. "I'm sorry, miss, but I don't see your name on the guest list. You can't go in." Marcus and Scarlett exploded with laughter. "You see, Victoria." Scarlett shouted loud enough for everyone to hear. "Some places just aren't meant for waitresses like you." Victoria simply smiled and stepped to the side, watching as they strutted through the doors, still cackling at her expense. But then something incredible happened. The elevator doors opened, and out stepped the most powerful executives in New York City. The moment they saw Victoria standing in the lobby, everything changed. The entire atmosphere shifted like electricity in the air. Every single executive stopped dead in their tracks and bowed their heads respectfully. "Miss Victoria Sterling," one of them said with deep respect. "What an honor to have you here today." Janet Mills turned white as a ghost, realizing she had just made the biggest mistake of her career. Harrison Blackwood, the distinguished head of the board, stormed over to the secretary with fury in his eyes. "Do you have any idea who you just turned away? She doesn't need to be on any list. She owns this entire building." The lobby fell into complete silence. You could hear a pin drop. Inside the conference room, Marcus and Scarlett were already seated, feeling smug and victorious. But then they watched in horror as Victoria was escorted through the doors like absolute royalty. Their faces went from confidence to pure panic in seconds. Victoria walked to the front of the room with her head held high. She turned to face the crowd of New York's most powerful businessmen, all staring at her in stunned silence. "Good morning, everyone," she said with a voice that commanded respect. "I am Victoria Sterling, CEO of Sterling Enterprises." Gasps echoed throughout the entire room. Marcus felt like the floor was crumbling beneath his feet. Scarlett looked like she had seen a ghost. After the meeting ended, Marcus rushed after Victoria like a desperate man. "Victoria! I had no idea." Victoria's face showed no emotion whatsoever. "I was the puppet master behind every single contract you ever won. Did you really think you earned them all by yourself?" Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but she held up her hand to silence him. "I never once lied to you, Marcus. You just never bothered to ask. And when I was finally ready to tell you the truth, you stabbed me in the back." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Marcus drowning in his own regret. Marcus stood there frozen as Victoria disappeared from sight. Her words kept replaying in his head like a broken record. For years, He thought he was a self-made success story. Now he realized that every opportunity, every break, every victory had been handed to him by the woman he threw away. Scarlett, sensing that her meal ticket was about to disappear, grabbed his arm desperately. "Marcus, let's get out of here. Don't waste time thinking about the past." But Marcus barely heard her. His pride was completely destroyed. The weight of what he had done was crushing his soul. He had lost the most amazing woman in the world because of his own greed. Meanwhile, Victoria left the Trump Tower with her head held higher than it had been in years. For the first time since her marriage, she felt completely free. No more lies. No more hiding. No more pretending to be someone she wasn't. She had finally taken back control of her life. Victoria decided to visit her little diner in Chicago to clear her head. As she sat in her favorite corner booth sipping chamomile tea, her phone buzzed with a text. "Alexander, how did the big meeting go?" She smiled for the first time all day and typed back, "Better than expected." Just a few minutes later, her phone started ringing. She answered on the second ring. "Alexander? I'm parked outside your diner," he said casually. "Figured you might need someone to talk to." Victoria looked out the window in surprise and saw Alexander leaning against his black Mercedes, looking sharp as always in his tailored suit. She couldn't help but smile as she walked outside to meet him. "You're pretty persistent, aren't you?" she said as she approached. He flashed that confident grin. "I prefer to call it being considerate." They started walking down the quiet Chicago street, the cool evening air making everything feel like a dream. Alexander slipped his hands into his pockets and glanced over at her. "So, do I finally get to hear what really happened today?" Victoria sighed and looked up at the stars. "Marcus found out who I really am. Let's just say it didn't end well for him." Alexander's mouth curved into a satisfied smirk. "Good. That fool never deserved you anyway." She laughed softly. "You barely even know me, Alexander." "Maybe not," he admitted, "but I know enough to see your worth. And I know you deserve way better than a man who treated you like a backup plan instead of a treasure." Victoria felt her heart skip a beat at his words, but she shook her head. "I'm not ready for anything serious right now." Alexander nodded, his face full of understanding. "Who said anything about serious? Let's just take it one day at a time. No pressure, no games." For the first time in years, Victoria felt completely safe. No hidden agendas. No manipulation. Just pure honesty. "All right," she said with a genuine smile. "Let's see what happens." Alexander's grin lit up his entire face. "That's all I needed to hear." As they stood there watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Victoria realized something powerful. This wasn't just the end of her old life, it was the beginning of something amazing. Days melted into weeks, and Victoria found herself falling for Alexander more and more. Their phone calls lasted for hours. Their dates became the highlight of her week. Unlike Marcus, Alexander never made her feel like she had to hide who she was. With him, she could just be Victoria, no masks, no pretending, no pressure about her fortune. One evening, Alexander surprised her with dinner at the most exclusive restaurant in Chicago. When Victoria arrived, Thomas, the restaurant's headwaiter, led her to a private rooftop terrace. The entire Chicago skyline sparkled below them like diamonds, and candles flickered romantically on their table. Alexander stood up as she approached, pulling out her chair like a true gentleman. "You look absolutely breathtaking," he said, his eyes full of admiration. Victoria blushed. "You say that every time we meet." "Because it's true every single time." They enjoyed their meal, talking and laughing about everything and nothing. For the first time in years, Victoria felt completely relaxed and happy. As they shared dessert, Alexander leaned back and studied her face. "You know, I did some digging into your little diner," he confessed. "What you built there is incredible. Even with all your family's money, you chose to start from nothing." Victoria nodded thoughtfully. "It was never about the money for me. Cooking is my passion. Running that diner lets me do what I truly love." Alexander smiled warmly. "That's what I admire most about you. You could have had everything handed to you on a silver platter, but you chose to earn it yourself." His words touched her soul. She had spent her whole life trying to prove herself to people who never really saw her. But Alexander saw her for exactly who she was. As the night went on, they shared stories, dreams, and quiet moments under the stars. But then Alexander's expression became serious. "I won't lie to you, Victoria," he said, setting down his wine glass. "I want to be more than just your friend. But I also know you've been hurt, so I'm not going to rush you." Victoria looked deep into his eyes, searching for any sign of deception. But all she saw was pure sincerity. She took a deep breath. "I don't want to rush either. But I do want to see where this leads us." Alexander's smile could have lit up the entire city. "That's all I needed to hear." But just as the perfect moment settled between them, a cold voice cut through the night air like a knife. "Well, isn't this a surprise?" Victoria's blood ran cold. She turned to see Marcus standing just a few feet away, his face twisted with anger and jealousy. Scarlett was nowhere to be seen. Marcus stepped closer, his eyes burning with rage as he stared at Victoria. "You moved on this fast? Really?" Alexander's expression stayed calm, but his eyes flashed with a dangerous warning. "I don't think this is any of your business." Marcus let out a bitter laugh. "You really think he's different, Victoria? That he won't destroy you the same way I did?" Victoria met his stare without flinching. Her voice was ice cold. "Even if he does hurt me, at least he's honest with me. That's something you never were." Marcus's jaw clenched with fury, but Alexander placed a protective hand over Victoria's and stood up slowly. "Walk away, Marcus," Alexander said with deadly calm. "You made your choice. Now live with the consequences." Marcus hesitated for a moment, his fists clenched at his sides. But something in Alexander's eyes made him think twice. He turned and walked away into the darkness, his shoulders slumped in complete defeat. Victoria let out a long sigh. "I should have known he'd show up eventually." Alexander squeezed her hand gently. "Let him come. He's in the past now. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in a long time, Victoria truly believed that everything was going to be okay. Victoria took a deep breath as she watched Marcus disappear into the Chicago night. Part of her felt incredibly relieved that she no longer had to hide, no longer had to put up with his lies and manipulation. But another part of her burned with anger. How dare he try to waltz back into her life after throwing her away like garbage? Alexander noticed the tension in her shoulders and gently squeezed her hand. "Hey," he said softly, "don't let that loser ruin our perfect night. He's not worth your energy." Victoria exhaled slowly, forcing herself to relax. "You're absolutely right." Alexander smirked. "I usually am." She rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling. "Cocky, aren't you?" "I prefer the word confident," he corrected with a wink. They spent the rest of the evening talking under the stars, and by the time Alexander dropped her off at her penthouse apartment, Victoria knew one thing for certain: her painful past was finally behind her, and an amazing future was waiting. A few weeks later, Victoria's little diner was busier than ever. For the first time in years, she felt completely at peace with her life. Alexander visited almost every day, sometimes just to watch her cook, sometimes to steal bites of food straight from the kitchen. "You know," he said one afternoon, leaning casually against the counter as she carefully plated a gourmet dish, "I could definitely get used to this." Victoria raised an eyebrow with a playful smile. "Get used to what exactly?" "Watching you do what you're passionate about," he said, his eyes sparkling with genuine admiration. "It's incredible to see someone so talented and driven." Victoria felt a warm feeling spread through her entire chest. Alexander had always supported her dreams, not because of her billions or her family name, but because he truly respected who she was as a person. But not everyone was celebrating her happiness. The peaceful afternoon was suddenly shattered when Scarlett Knox burst through the diner's front door like a hurricane. Her designer heels clicked aggressively against the floor as she marched straight toward the kitchen. Every single employee froze in terror as she stormed past them, her eyes blazing with pure hatred. Victoria calmly wiped her hands on a kitchen towel, completely unbothered by the dramatic entrance. "Well, well, Scarlett. To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure?" "You!" Scarlett hissed, pointing an accusing finger directly at Victoria's face. "You think you've won some kind of game, don't you?" Victoria tilted her head with fake innocence. "Won what exactly?" "Marcus is completely destroyed." Scarlett screamed. He lost everything after your little power move at that meeting. And now you're out here flaunting your new boyfriend like you're some kind of innocent victim. Scarlett's voice dripped with venom. You ruined his entire life. Victoria let out a cold laugh. No, Scarlett. Marcus ruined himself. Scarlett's face twisted with rage. You're nothing but a spoiled little princess who likes to play dress-up as a poor person. Victoria crossed her arms and stared her down. And you're nothing but a desperate gold digger who threw herself at a married man for money. Remind me again, who really lost in this situation? Scarlett's face turned bright red with fury. You'll regret this, Victoria. Mark my words. Victoria didn't even flinch. I seriously doubt that. Scarlett spun around and stormed out of the diner, slamming the door so hard that the windows rattled. Alexander, who had been quietly watching the entire confrontation from the corner, walked over with an amused smirk on his face. Remind me to never get on your bad side, he said with a chuckle. Victoria laughed and looked into his eyes. Then don't ever betray me. Alexander's grin widened as he pulled her closer. Not a chance in hell. As Victoria looked at this incredible man standing before her, she knew without a doubt that this was a love worth fighting for. What would you do if your partner betrayed you for someone else like Marcus did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with someone who needs to hear this story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.